Here.
Councilmember Bertolino, Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Nyhan, Councilmember Jaxie,
Here.
Councilmember Galani,
Here.
Councilmember McCune. Okay.
Alrighty, I'll take a motion to approve the February meeting minute. Councilmember Jaxie, seconded by Councilmember Clark. Do we have any amendments? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the February minutes as written, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right. Any abstain? Okay. Do you have any member of the public here to comment?
The only person we have in the public is Hugh, and he's here for the first item.
Seeing no other individuals here to comment, Mr. Hugh, we will have you please discuss your program for discounts for cyclers.
And I'm moving him over right now. I'll just give a brief introduction as he's moving over. I provided a memorandum for the committee's review just to kind of introduce why Hugh is here today, as he is now moved over and hopefully will be with us in audio video here shortly. I provided some background regarding Hugh's professional career and his positioning in Wildwood, and also what his initial request was to me when we met now almost a year and a half ago. We met in very late 2019 at the Miller House. I think Hugh had lots of ideas for us, and we had planned to bring him forward to a committee meeting at some point in last year. But as we know, 2020 did not exactly go as planned. So our intention to bring him forward has taken a little bit longer than we had planned, but he is with us tonight. I provided some background for the committee's review. I also this afternoon provided everybody with some slides that I'll be pulling up to show as he goes through his presentation. And I believe both you and I are available to answer any questions as he goes through them. But with that, I will turn it over to Hugh.
Okay. So just so you know that I used to travel the world for Anheuser-Busch InBev and in most of our offices, except the US, well, actually New York City. You were actually welcome to have a beer towards the end of the day. You had a very nicely set up bar with our amazing brands on tap, and that's often where we did a lot of collaboration and got a lot of work done, and I never saw anyone abuse it. So it's part of my culture to have a beer with friends. So, Julian, do you have the slides?
Yep, pull them up right now.
Okay, good. So while Julian's doing that, just a little bit about me. We've been in Wildwood in Ward 7 for about 28 years now, and raised 2 children here and love it here, and have been active volunteers in the school district and helping maintain our local parks, Wildwood and Rockwood and Al Foster. So as you know, I worked for Anheuser-Busch InBev. I actually spent 34 years all in different sustainability roles, most recently leading global environmental and community programs. I now do part-time consulting with companies and nonprofits. I'm also an avid cyclist and volunteer to support the region's efforts to improve walking and cycling networks for everybody, including folks with disabilities. And in my opinion, there's really no better place to cycle and walk than through my bike travels in St. Louis City and in the suburbs. I learned about this program that I'm going to share with you tonight. I think it could work really well in Wild. We have the infrastructure and assets to I think, make it work. And so with that, let's go to the next slide. So it's a very simple concept, and that's where we would partner with Wildwood businesses to create incentives or offer discounts for people that use active mobility to travel to those businesses. And I believe it supports economic development and is very consistent with our values, plans, and the amazing infrastructure that we have. I have spent a little bit of time going through our master plan and vision and parks documents and other things. And this kind of concept is very consistent with all those documents and who we say we are. Next slide. So Wildwood is already a premier destination for mountain biking and road cycling, attracting both our own residents and those from the region to come to our parks and ride our country roads. I think this program would encourage more spending to support our businesses, especially after a really tough year, probably for a lot of our businesses. There's pretty good research that shows that people who cycle and walk spend more money and more time in their communities and have a better sense of community. Generally, people want to live in communities that are walkable and bikeable. That's why I'm really proud to say that I live in Wildwood and we offer that. Over the last year, I'm sure many of you have recognized that we've seen high use of our walking and cycling infrastructure. I think this kind of a program is a way to continue to keep people moving and engaged in our community. I'm sure you also know, those who've lived here for a while like me, that as we grow, we see more traffic, more noise, more pollution. So encouraging this kind of, these incentives make sense. And as I mentioned, it's really part of our DNA. Next slide. So really simple concept here. We would explain the benefits of offering discounts and some kind of recognition for active transportation to our businesses. So hopefully we begin that tonight if you think this is worthwhile. So there's an education process for our businesses. The businesses that support this intent would join as participants and actively promote. And then when we get a critical mass of businesses that support it, we simply promote it to residents. And the next slide will show you a little bit more detail on how it works for businesses. So it's about $27 for each business that wants to participate, and they would sign up and receive educational materials and participation materials. You see some of those there on the right. This organization called Bike Benefits would assist and provide support and guidance on what makes sense for incentives to each business. It works a little bit differently for a coffee shop versus, say, a clothing store. I've talked with Bike Benefits, and they think this program could work for all kinds of active mobility. It's up to us. It's designed for cycling, but it could work for whatever we want it to. So the businesses would in turn sell stickers or cards. Stickers would go on helmets. Cards would obviously go to folks that just need to carry them, and that enables the individual to discounts. And I believe there's a discounted price for groups of 10 business for greater than 10 businesses. Next slide. So this is a map that shows you all the participating businesses in the St. Louis area. And so the cool thing is that any participating businesses go on this national registry. And you see that most of the businesses are in St. Louis City or adjacent suburbs. So, you know, in my opinion, it presents a leadership opportunity for Wildwood to do something like this. And the next slide. So I wanted to do a little research. So I sent inquiries to 8 businesses and received 5 responses, which I was pretty pleased with. And so this is generally, I'm kind of paraphrasing from all those emails, but businesses thought it was a good program. They saw some additional traffic into their businesses. They got good support from Bike Benefits. They thought it would be a great program if they promoted it properly. And I think that's where Wildwood has an advantage. We're a smaller community than a Kirkwood or a Webster. I think we have a good newsletter, good social media. We've got a lot of events where we could try to promote something like this. And everybody said they were going to continue to participate, which I saw is positive. Next, I think we're done. So that is a really quick summary. And with that, I welcome questions and your feedback.
So I don't see any hands up yet, so I will go ahead and ask you some questions. My first question is, if participation is good or better than expected, do you feel that we have enough bike racks near our local businesses so that individuals can bike and safely lock their equipment?
That's an awesome question. My wife and I were talking about this last night when I showed her this presentation. As somebody who gets around on a bike now, so I don't really drive anymore now that I don't have to go downtown. My honest answer is no. I do not think we have enough bike racks. So I'm locking my bike when I'm frequenting our businesses. I'm Deerbrook has a rack. There's a rack near Walgreens. I'm not sure if there's one even at City Hall. Tell me if I'm wrong.
There's one up top on the backside.
Oh, up top. Okay,
On
great.
the back side.
Okay, good.
Okay.
So that would be a consideration if we get a lot of individuals, which I hope we do, and I hope it would justify that kind of spending.
And there are certainly, businesses on Old Manchester as well, near the community college, and I'm not a road biker, but I would anticipate that it would be the same situation with a lack of bike racks as well.
Exactly.
Okay, my next question is, have you ever, it sounds like the walking and other modes of transportation are new to this because the national program is specific to biking. The way our town center and business communities kind of exist right now throughout the city is that a walking program, while more inclusive, may benefit residents in some wards as opposed to other wards, whereas a biking program certainly benefits everyone. You can be in Ward 6 and be a distance cyclist and come to town center. You can be in Ward 2. I live in Ward 2 and represent Ward 2, and I certainly can walk down to the businesses on Strecker and Clayton. I do so quite frequently. It would be very difficult for me to make it to town center. I can do that if I park at Community Park and walk over there, which I did last weekend. So my other question would be, how would a business know whether or not someone was actually walking and not just coming from the parking lot down the road? And it may be harder, certainly, if you're a retail location, to make money from foot traffic, right? If you have to carry a big bag of clothing, you're not going to walk the 6 miles back to your house in a different ward. You might walk in Ward 7 or 8 because you can easily get back to Cherry Hills. Where if it's a food business or a coffee shop, that's something that you're not taking a large bag home at a point of sale. So I certainly am in favor of this for the bicycle program as presented, and I'm open to expanding to other modes of mobile transportation. I'm just not quite sure how that would work.
Okay. So I think it would work in a similar fashion. Maybe you just carry that sticker or that card with you and you present it and you would save whatever discount is being offered. The reason I included walking is just because of our great infrastructure. And you're right, I want it to be inclusive. You're right, it's designed for cycling. And I think it's up to us how we want to start. If our businesses are receptive, it's up to us how we want to start. One possible way is to start with cycling, see how it goes and expand it. Another way would just open it up and offer it to different forms of moving. But I don't have an opinion one way or another on that. I would welcome your thoughts, additional thoughts on that.
I have one other point, and then I've got Councilmember Dodwell, and then is anybody else on there? And then Councilmember Clark. One other option in addition to road cyclists would be to reach out to the members of Gork, which
Mhm.
I know some people do both, but some people only do off, roading and mountain biking. It would be nice for them, since they are putting in the miles on a trail, but perhaps
Yeah.
not choosing to do on the road, if they could also participate. Plus, that does tick one of your boxes for, that sort of increased membership and promotion, because they have their own promotion. So,
Yeah, I totally agree. I forgot to mention Gork, but when I mentioned that other communities that are doing this program didn't promote it all that well to get the maximum benefit, I was thinking of Gork. They're very active out here. I ride on their trails a lot, and I'm thinking this is a great event for the races that are out here, organized events. Anybody that comes to our area after a bike ride or a mountain bike ride, why not go to our businesses and get a little discount for a coffee or a beer or whatever the case is. So I think there's Gork, and I think there's other organizations that we could reach out to help promote it.
for your patience with me, Councilmember Dodwell.
That's quite all right, quite all right. I'm glad you brought up the point of involving Gork. That was one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we definitely present a concept like this to them and have them be the first subscribers to it, hopefully. Because in our past meetings, we have tried to figure out how we can gather those individual bike riders into town center to be able to take advantage of those things that we have in our town center versus Eureka or Chesterfield, et cetera. So if we would have a slight discount capability, then I think that would entice them to either drive over or cycle on over to any of our locations. The other question I had was, if we look at town center and the density in town center, even though it's not 100% capacity, it's getting pretty close to capacity. So even with those individuals coming into our town center by walking, I think that would help the businesses in our town center. And it would also be easy for them to walk from Cherry Hills. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of people that live all around that area. I live over off of Strucker, and I've walked from Strucker all the way up to town center, and it's a nice walk, even when it's July and 900 degrees. So I think if we can encourage people to continue doing what they're doing with the walking that I'm seeing everyone taking the time to do, if we can incentivize that a little bit, then it's only a benefit for them personally, and hopefully for our businesses in the area, be they restaurants or some of our retail. I can even see somebody saying, I'm going to take a walk today. I'll go over to Jen's and see if they've got anything new while I'm over here. And then I'll just tell her to hold it for me so I can drive over here in a couple of days or something. I mean, people are going to get creative in those kinds of ideas. So I fully support us moving forward with trying to put together a program, identify the steps we need to go through to do so, and then getting it going ASAP, because April's just around the corner and we're all going to be out even more than we were in January and February.
Councilmember Dodwell, are you making a motion?
I'm making a motion that
You're
we move
making a
forward.
motion. Okay, so does your motion include expanding the cyclers program to include walking, or would you like to just start with the cycling?
I think it should include all, and let's see what happens.
Okay,
I don't think we need to say no to anybody.
do we have a second on the motion? Okay, we don't have a second right now.
Okay.
So maybe we'll circle back.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, we got a second from Mr. Galani. Thank you.
Sorry, I was trying to find my mute.
Okay, he put
you
himself
found
on
it.
mute.
Drive careful.
Yes, yes. He can second it, but once he votes, he has to be on camera. Mr. Cross.
Thank you. I was wondering, and Julian or Joe Vunich maybe can discuss this. We had the Centaur time trials last Saturday. Would there be an opportunity to have, dovetailed this in maybe where we hand out stickers or something to the riders that would then, because again, that was part of a previous discussion that you guys remember about that, because they're away from town center, but might there be an opportunity in the future to use these stickers or something? We hand them out there and then that brings them into town center. Do you see a benefit or an opportunity there?
I think there's a benefit. The challenge with that is that there is a cost to the stickers and the decals. So instead of handing out, obviously you could sell them. You could work with the event host, Big Shark, to maybe sell the decals at the event. But because the business would be purchasing or signing up for the program and essentially purchasing those decals, you would definitely want to make sure that you receive some type of payment for them that would then be going back to those businesses. Handing them out would just, I think, not be fair to the business owners.
Well, I guess what I was wondering is, maybe the city could buy some of them. Okay, and then hand them out. So the business is getting the money and we're handing them out, and hopefully the recoupment of that is bringing folks to town center. And it just kind of feeds on itself. I don't know how many participated in the time trials, but we could buy a block of them and maybe we'd even get sort of a group discount or a bulk discount, if you will, that ultimately then, so it's a win for the businesses, and then it brings people in and they get their free coffee, but then they buy a Danish and they buy this and they buy that. I don't know. It was just a thought to see if that would help to bring that group of people that typically might not come into town center. Maybe that was a way to bring them in, and hopefully that would be a nominal cost to the city ultimately.
I love that idea. Councilmember Clark, I apologize. I went out of order there with Mr. Cross.
I'm sorry.
No, you're all right.
You're fine. Yeah, I had a few questions. The first one is to Julian. What do we know that all of our businesses are currently wheelchair accessible?
As far as retail businesses, I don't know. Joe might have a better idea from when those buildings were constructed, and some that were developed during the city of Wildwood and some that were predating the city. I can't think of any retail first floor businesses off the top of my mind that are not. Well, actually, I'll correct myself. I know for one, Larry's Tavern is not, because I was there recently.
Yeah.
And there's several steps to get up inside, but that building is 71 years old. So not necessarily every building in town, but I'll defer to Joe for more experience.
All of the commercial buildings are accessible, even in the case of the two-story buildings here in downtown town center. There's elevators inside the buildings to allow for access up to the second floor. So we've been making sure that buildings are accessible since the incorporation.
My question is, because we're offering this to wheelchairs as one of the cycling, and I'm really happy to see that, because that was going to be my first question when I first read this. How do we deal with the accessibility? But people that are wheelchair abled, if it's publicized that that's available to them, we should be sure and make sure it is. Another question for you, Mr. Hugh, is how do we quantifiably, is there a way that you quantifiably measure the benefits to the business owners or customers and profits? Or is it just, yeah, we're doing better?
I haven't dove in that deep into this yet, but I can tell you that I saw a video from Walla Walla, Washington. It's actually like a podcast or a public TV thing where they talked about their program, which is pretty robust. But I was disappointed because their champions could not tell the interviewer how many people are participating. And so I made a note here that if we do it in Wildwood, which I'm hoping we do, that, we need to set up some kind of tracking system with our businesses. And it could be as simple as counting stickers. We have to really brainstorm to see how Julian, maybe you can help us, but I'd love to track. I'm a company corporate person, so we're used to having targets and goals for everything.
Mhm.
And everything is generally in financial terms. Even
Mhm.
my area of sustainability, I was very accountable. And so, maybe we can get creative on that and move from beyond anecdotal evidence to something more concrete. But I don't have a real good answer for you right now on that.
Thank you. And is this program, is it a 501c3? Is it an NGO? What is this program?
They're .org, so they're a nonprofit, I believe. And they're located actually in my neck of the woods where I'm from, is in upstate New York. One of the options that I was thinking about this is one program. I didn't do extensive research on others. There's lots of aspects about a formal program that I like because there's some history there and guidance and some infrastructure that would support us versus just trying to do something ourselves. But when I Google searched, I didn't find other programs. This is the one that came up. I'm not saying that there's not others, but this is the one that popped out.
Thank you very much. My son is in New York right now at Rochester in school.
And we were just over the next town over in Syracuse.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we just lost Michael. Hopefully he'll be able to get back on, especially when it comes time to vote on this. As the
Moving him in
second.
right now.
Okay, great. Well, I do have a couple of thoughts.
I'm here.
Oh, excellent. Okay, well, if it's all right with you as the second to the motion and with Councilmember Dodwell, by just consent, would it be acceptable that the department comes back with a recommendation for a measuring metric system? So whether that be counting stickers or a way how businesses will report the traffic and success of this, and an estimate of what it would take in the future to buy blocks of these stickers, and where, and this is where Mr. Hughes Share can give some advice of where he as a cyclist would love to see additional bike racks.
Yeah.
Would that be okay with the maker and the second of the motion?
Mhm.
Okay. Another option too with walking, again, because we're such a broad community, right? So my ward, actually goes out to Wild Horse Subdivision. So they can walk to Chesterfield businesses and they can walk to Fix, and that's kind of about it in that area. So for someone like those residents, similar to the virtual hiking recreation program that we just did, maybe there's a way for them to log their miles and submit it to our version of the program to show, hey, we're walking. It's just easier for us to walk where we live than it is to drive to a parking lot and walk to another area all of the time. It might increase participation and decrease that desire to cheat, if you will. Any thoughts on that? Councilmember Dodwell, and then I've got Mr. Goonich.
I tend to agree with you in concept. I'm not sure how we can track all of that is the issue effectively. I mean, I don't think it would matter whether somebody rode their bike in Santa Fe, New Mexico, as long as they came in and shopped and worked with our businesses in town. I mean, that's the ultimate goal here. So I'm not sure how we would track a virtual. Maybe
Right.
Joe can provide some more detail.
Yes, Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And with your permission, I was thinking maybe Mr. Cross, Mr. Jacqueline, Mr. Scher, and possibly Gary Cruz, our bicycle coordinator, could meet with the WBA leadership and see what they're thinking about a program like this. They're a pretty creative bunch, as we found from their own event schedule and the things they do with their events. Maybe they have some ideas how to take a good program and make it better.
I think that would be an excellent suggestion.
Hey, Hugh, a quick question for you. Looking at the map of the current business locations, and as you mentioned, they're kind of consolidated or concentrated in St. Louis City and close by. I know you mentioned in one of your slides the critical mass of businesses that participate before we really promote it to residents. With a business community of our size and the location of where most of them are located, do you know what that critical mass might be? Is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 2? I'm just wondering, when we start doing our outreach, what's our target goal here to make sure that we hit our mark before we start promoting it out to the community?
I don't have a great answer for you, but I can, I'd be willing to call bike benefits. And maybe if you give me some, I can go to the website and get, I believe there's a nice sheet out there on our businesses. I could show that to them and ask them what they think.
So if we have a couple of business owners, I'll just use 3 business owners that decide to sign on board, are they immediately automatically added to bicycle benefits, or does that organization require us to meet a certain threshold before they recognize our businesses as participating?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'll find out, but my gut is that, if you're a small rural Missouri town and you want to do this, you may only have 1 or 2 businesses.
Right.
So I would think that they would accept anybody on their map, but I'll verify that.
Mr. Scher, Mr. Vunich.
Okay, Madam Chair. Mr. Scher, didn't you say that the businesses get a group discount if there's 10 or more?
I did not find that on their website, but the director, the CEO of Bike Benefits mentioned that to me last week. So I have that as a follow-up.
Well, maybe that's the critical mass. If we can get 10, then there's a discount.
Yeah, I'll check that.
Thank you.
And just as a side thought, if for some reason, my understanding is it is a nonprofit, let's say it's not, let's say it's, for profit, it wouldn't help us get it on a national map or a state map, but we could always go our own way and make our own stickers and our own program as a backup if there's not good financial transparency with this group. But it sounds like there will be, and Mr. Jacqueline can verify this for us next time we come back.
Yeah, and I think a benefit of joining on with a program like this that's already established is that all the residents, even in the city of St. Louis and close by, that have a sticker, if they are in our neck of the woods visiting our trails, they can get that same discount on our businesses. If we do it ourselves organically, we can offer that to our residents, but it's only going to be good for our businesses. So it'd be more of a traditional shop local program, which is great, and a lot of communities do that very successfully. But if we tie on with an existing program, all those businesses and all those people in the city and Clayton and Webster that already have a sticker can come to our businesses and shop local.
Yeah.
Third outcome. Well, does anybody have anything else? If not, I think we're ready to call the question.
I just wanted to say real quickly, I concur very much with you, Julian, that we have a lot of individuals that travel all over the United States. And so if they can use this same tool in other cities where they may be biking, then I think we can make it a more beneficial tool for them. And it doesn't require the city to keeping track of who registers, et cetera.
Good points. Well, do we need the motion restated? It's been a while. Ms. Patrick, will you please restate the motion on the floor?
To move forward with initiating steps to implement the program inclusive of walkers, and to come back with how the businesses will track the program, the black sticker costs, and bicycle rack costs.
Right.
That sum it up pretty well.
That sums it up pretty well. So let's do a voice vote on this. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Well, thank you so much, Mr. Hugh Sheriff, for coming and speaking with the committee. You're welcome to hang around for the rest of the meeting if you so care.
I'm going to go have a beer.
That sounds good. Have a great night, and we'll see you
Okay,
soon.
thanks for your
Thank
time.
you.
All right, bye.
Appreciate it.
All right, moving on to the next item for action. We have our update to our economic development guide, and we're going to be doing those 3 items listed, reviewing the schedule and the stakeholders, so we can start that initial markup. I'm going to have Julian go ahead and introduce this for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. As Chair Edens mentioned, there are 3 action items on today's item. We identified them in the memo for your consideration. At the last meeting of this committee in February, we presented a very early preliminary draft schedule of the potential schedule of events to help us navigate the update for 2021 of the Economic Development Guide. It was a first go at it. It was kind of all over the place, but it was just to get everything in one location as far as the different steps that we foresee this committee going through and completing over the process of this next year to review and fully update that what is currently 5-year document, hopefully for the next 5 to 10 years. With the input we received at last month's meeting in February and some that we received since then, I redid the schedule a little bit to make it hopefully a little bit more streamlined, to separate the responsible parties, show all the committee's actions in one category, separated out the city council's actions in another, city team members as well, and then some of those hopefully target dates for the census data to be released from the U.S. government. The dates largely are the same from the last meeting in February. I did extend a couple of the action items, expanding the strategic planning process for the council out an extra month, giving us an extra month for some of the interviews with stakeholders, those types of items. But largely, with the schedule, we did have included an item to bring this back to the committee tonight for the committee's review and approval. If the committee endorses this schedule, we will use it to help us navigate the rest of the process for the better part of this next year. But I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to comment on the schedule. And if there are no comments, then looking for action to approve the schedule for the committee.
Okay, so discussion just now on the schedule. Looking for a motion on the floor. Councilmember Clark, and also I don't know what happened to Councilmember Dodwell, if she's in the waiting room or if she's just totally off the meeting, but if she is, we no longer have a quorum and can't take action.
My question is just, Jillian, if we vote on this and you need to tweak it as we go along, do we have to come back and vote again, or can you just tweak it as we go based on need?
My personal opinion is we can tweak it as we go. I'm using the recent practice of the Town Center Update team and the process they use to help organize their monthly meetings. I believe, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, that TCUT used their monthly meeting schedule kind of as a working document, and we intend to do the same.
Good.
Do we know if Councilmember Dodwell is trying to get back on or?
Do not see her yet.
Okay. So now we're just free to have a discussion but not make any motions. So I guess while we're at it, we can go ahead and have a discussion. Is, in general, everybody okay with the recommended stakeholders? Councilmember Clark?
Yeah, I did have some questions about the stakeholders because I guess I was looking for more of some categories of stakeholders. It's almost like they're just really, it's hard for me because I'm not good at this, to look at this and know where the stakeholders fit in. Is it a private business? Wouldn't education facilities be part of our stakeholders here? Because education is really, institutions shape the workforce, early childhood all the way through post-secondary, which we've got all of it here. Because we have to have short and long-term, long-sighted visions, so to speak. The suppliers to these businesses should be there for our stakeholders also. Which ones are internal stakeholders and external? I'm just thinking that if it was broke down into some categories, which ones are primary, which ones are secondary, are they direct, indirect, that kind of thing. Is there a way we could break that down just a bit? Just because I don't understand it very well.
Councilmember Clark, I can definitely provide additional detail with the list of representatives and stakeholders that we identified in the list. From the original Economic Development Guide in 2016, there was part of the document that identified the involvement of 25 stakeholders, and I was going to look it up. I just can't recall what page it was on. 25 stakeholders that were largely focused on different components of Wildwood business. It included specific Wildwood business owners, property owners, residents, developers, land developers, real estate brokers, anybody that has direct knowledge and involvement with the economic development efforts or future economic development efforts at the time for the city of Wildwood. That guide was led through the, at the time, PEP committee that Joe was involved with. And I know Joe, more than anybody on this call, knows exactly what went through that process. So I think he can lend more expertise than anybody about how the selection process was handled for those specific stakeholders. And we can ask him about that here in a second. I kind of use that as the framework of identifying potential recommended stakeholders for this round of the update, not necessarily trying to recreate the wheel and have 25 brand new individuals. And as we identified in the memorandum, there were 25 originally. The recommendation for this time for the 5-year update is 10 to 15, just to look at the work, see what we had done, what has changed, and what the current snapshot is for the city and what the current needs and desires are for the city. Initially, and Chair Edens and I had talked about this coming in tonight with either a blank slate and just asking you all as the committee, what types of individuals, what types of categories for stakeholders would you all like to see? And with Chair Edens, we determined that the best course was at least come in with an initial slate of recommended individuals, and then we all as the committee can work from that. So this was not intended, hopefully, to be any kind of definitive or final list. This was just an initial discussion point that we all can use, knowing who has a pretty good feel for the community these days. And these are not constrained to any specific location. It includes, I think, people from all different facets of Wildwood business life, all different locations, town center, people closer to Clayton and Strecker, people down in the Chesterfield Valley portion of the city, people that are Wildwood residents, people that are not, individuals with recent business experience, people that have had long tenured real estate development interest as well. And hopefully Joe can chime in with how the initial stakeholders were selected the last time around. But hopefully we all as a committee can look at this and make some recommendations on if we'd like to modify it or just additional information on how these individuals were identified.
I would recommend, and I would like to go back into this in just a minute. Let's put a pin in it. Councilmember Dodwell made it back on. We have a quorum. So before we started this topic, we needed a motion on the floor and a second to approve the presented timeline. Councilmember Dodwell, you didn't get a chance to comment on that. If you have any concerns about it.
No concerns other than I think we can move a little bit faster, but I'm always for putting a further date out and then putting a thumb as a next project manager on people to get it done early and we look even better.
Excellent. And Julian did assure us earlier that it is not written in stone, that it still will have flexibility regardless of the motion. Can I get a motion to made by Councilmember Galani, seconded by Councilmember Clark? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, thank you very much. So now let's go back to the topic that we were just on, including discussing the list of recommended stakeholders. I did want to bounce off of what Councilmember Clark said. I noticed that the St. Louis Community College is on there. That's good, as it is specific as a Wildwood campus. It's an educational institution, job creator. Supports the area businesses around it. The Wildwood Business Association is an umbrella association, so all of those smaller businesses maybe that you don't see on there are represented through them. And I noticed that Councilmember Clark, you brought up suppliers of these businesses being included because there's sort of a chain of events that has to occur for something to be successful. Agree with your train of thought. I'm just thinking that for some of these businesses that would be rather hard to do, right? So Doug Zix, Zix Great Outdoors, I know for a fact he orders a lot from other national nurseries, right? So his shipments were delayed during COVID because there was a lack of availability of farm and agricultural workers to supply adequate stock. But there's not really a good way to reflect that with a group to invite necessarily. That's just one example. So there was a little bit of a pumpkin shortage this year. I don't know if you all noticed the pumpkin shortage.
Yeah, I was just, my question just was more in line with which ones of these are the primary stakeholders and which ones are the derivative stakeholders or the secondary stakeholders, like the suppliers would be maybe considered secondary. Is the college a primary stakeholder? Is that a secondary stakeholder? Is it I'm thinking like the customers, the suppliers, the investors, creditors, all of those are stakeholders, but they maybe are secondary stakeholders. And I understand you want to keep it to a smaller number. It's just, it's a little confusing to me, and it's probably just because I don't understand it yet.
Councilmember Dodwell?
I'm going to try to take a stab at this and defining, I think, this list that's here. I think our ultimate goal when we had our last meeting was to get a group of the businesses that we feel are some of the most visible, but also some of the not quite so visible individuals on this team so that we could look at a broad array from their perspective. And so I guess I'm a little confused on where you're trying to head with this. Are you looking at what the secondary and tertiary stakeholders that are going to supply these businesses may have to say about how they do business? Or I think as a city, we just need to rely on these individual businesses to present how they would best like to see economic development move ahead in the city of Wildwood along with the council. And I guess I'm not sure that we can really get down to the nuts and bolts that you're trying to get down to, because Zix is going to have his conversation with his suppliers, and they'll either do what he wants, or if they choose not to, then he's going to have to scramble. So I guess I'm not following where you're trying to get, Teresa.
Well, I'm just looking at it as every time I've been in product planning is we've always had primary are the key, are called key stakeholders.
Mhm.
And those are the ones that are directly affected by the outcome. The secondary stakeholders are always the ones that help to complete the project. Like the administration, financial, legal, whatever, that helps to back us up. I just don't know on this list, are these all key stakeholders? Are these all directly affected by the outcome, or are they secondary to the outcome? I'm just going by definition of stakeholders and by how you select stakeholders.
I think if I understand what you're saying, then these would all be primary.
Mhm.
They are, and I'll expand on that just
Yeah.
real quick. The only, I think in that vein, the only groups or the only type of entity that might not be considered boots on the ground, immediate primary type stakeholder, or maybe more of the real estate broker, that specific business, that person, that employee is not based in Wildwood. I'm just looking at the list and recognizing that maybe, you know, the top of the list, Ben with Newmark Zimmer, he is probably one of the more well-known office brokers in Wildwood because he represents several different buildings in Wildwood. His office is not here. I believe they're in Clayton. You know, he has hundreds of listings all over St. Louis area, but he does manage many of the office listings in Wildwood. He doesn't necessarily have a business here. He's not the property owner. He's not a business owner. He's a broker. So he has firsthand knowledge of the office environment in Wildwood, even though he himself is not involved directly in the office environment of Wildwood. So that type, whether it's Ben at Newmark or Weller with Capital or Charlie with St. Ange, all three of those have a very good pulse on the Wildwood business community without themselves being a primary stakeholder within the Wildwood business community, if that makes sense.
I think I might be able to add one additional thing that might help too, Councilmember Clark. So it is possible to have this group and then have them have a conversation about their secondary stakeholders, but we may not necessarily want to invite some of them. So here's an example. So St. Louis Community College in Wildwood is on the list. You're right that there is a chain of education that occurs from pre-K all the way up through 12 that has to produce individuals that can enter a secondary education, graduate within a reasonable time, and then transition to the workforce. What we know about the Rockwood schools in our district is our students are more likely to go to a four-year institution. So a Rockwood school board member may not be the best reflection of the secondary principle that affects the specific St. Louis College campus. In fact, I would imagine that a lot of their students are from outside of the Lafayette and Eureka school system. Maybe not all. So that would be a question for them, is what components have to happen for you to be successful? And I certainly think that we can ask these other businesses on the list the same thing, right? So we know, for example, as I mentioned with Mr. Zick, that many of the components that have to work for him are based on the national supply chain. And that would be easier for him to kind of enumerate. So did he experience an issue with a shortage of trucking, or because sometimes, you know, plants are shipped in seeds, and I know there was an issue, for example, with the post office that backed up, and so some plants were dying because they weren't watered and they didn't have sunlight, things like that. So that's something that he can tell us without inviting a member of a shipping group that isn't in Wildwood to the table. Would that help kind of alleviate some of the concerns and address them?
Yeah, I don't really have a concern. I just am trying to understand this. And I think that, yeah, I can see where we got the list from. I guess another one of my questions would be, how did we pick these? Were there certain, did we go in different directions, like you do have one here for, you know, the college, or were there certain, I think I mentioned education and public, private, different, did we try to pick somebody from different areas of
We did.
work?
We did. And so I will say, just as a disclaimer, none of these businesses have been contacted in any way yet. This is an initial slate of potential candidates that you all may endorse as a potential stakeholder to be invited to participate. They may say yes, they may not be interested, they may pass. I provided a list of 15. I'm hopeful that maybe between 10 and 15 are willing to participate, but this was just an initial draft of hopefully a variety of different types of businesses in town and throughout the city. Obviously, many of them focused more in town center. We did look at intentionally trying to get a good variety of different types of businesses. Also looking at some of the major players in town, whether it's because they're a major employer, maybe they had a recent project with significant experience with the city because of opening a new business or developing new space or expanding their business, having recent involvement with the city. Looking at maybe some of those that have had not so great experiences with the city in the past and not wanting to sugarcoat everything, maybe they have some constructive criticism for us as well. But looking at our list of business owners, our list of potential developers and existing past developers, looking at some of the more academic, educational type institutions in town, trying to get a good variety of the different types of people that really impact economic development for Wildwood and have had recent involvement in this program over the last 5 years. I do not personally know, and hopefully I can kick it to Joe here shortly, who all the initial 25 were at the last go around in 2016 and how that compares to this group. In 2016, the process probably was a little bit different than what we're anticipating for this go around. For this go around, we're anticipating virtual meetings, either one-on-one or in a group setting with these stakeholders, potentially one, maybe two. We're looking for some pretty basic information from these groups. As a business owner, or as a developer, or as a landowner or broker, what's working in Wildwood for you? What isn't working right now? What can we as a city do better? What challenges do you have as a business owner? You know, what about Wildwood is difficult for you? What can we look at potentially reviewing to make changes in the future that could make it better for you as a business owner? I think one component of the guide back in 2016 was asking what the needs and desires were of those stakeholders for us as a community. What businesses are lacking? What types of community services are lacking? Using this group as more of a focus group representing the needs and desires of the community as a whole, so that we can use that to guide the program for the next 5 or 10 years. But like I said, this is a very initial draft and none of these groups have been contacted yet. This was put out there just to get some feedback of these types of individuals and if it fits what you all believe is a good group to start with. And hopefully I can kick to Joe.
I see Mr. Cross's hand. Would you like to go before Mr. Vunich, or go ahead, Mr. Cross?
Thank you. In looking at the list, I'm sure everybody on this call could probably come up with another stakeholder or two to add to the list. But one that comes to my mind anyway, Julian, is, and I may not have the name right, Jeannie Goski. Jenny Goski. I mean, I see that that name and her agency a lot of involvement in Wildwood from a number of perspectives, and I'm curious if that would be one that you would consider putting on. Again, if you're trying to get, if you think 10 to 15 is a manageable number of people ultimately to settle on, you know, and if you have a bigger sample and then some may choose to not do that, would that be one of the business owners that you would consider?
Jenny would be great. Jenny's been very involved. She started her business only about, I'd say now 3 years ago. So she's gotten very involved in a short period of time. Jenny is the current vice president of the WBA and is responsible for most of the special events that the WBA hosts. Also knowing that we all reach our limit at some point, I think Emily Willis, who's the current president, is about to term out of her tenure as president of the WBA, and it will be Jenny's ship to run in very short order from now. I think here in the next couple of months, I believe Jenny's going to take over as president of the WBA. So currently on our list, we have Emily just because of her recent experience. But I think between Jenny and Emily, I think we have a very good grip on the WBA, but also for Jenny's business. Jenny has relocated her business. She's looking for her next permanent home. She moved out of her current location, or I guess her now past location, on the backside of the Pure by Jen and Benedetto's building. She's currently operating out of the Wildwood Workspaces co-working space upstairs and trying to find her next permanent home. So her office location is a little bit in flux, but she's still very much focused and based in Wildwood. So I think definitely it's worth considering whether adding her, or maybe when I do meet with the WBA, it could be some combination of Emily and Jenny together.
I would suggest a combination. Mr. Vunich, and then Councilmember Dodwell.
Madam Chair, I will defer to Councilmember Dodwell.
All right, Councilmember Dodwell.
I think she has competition for her microphone right now.
Joe, why don't you go ahead? I'm being protected by a 100-pound Labrador from the neighbor walking the street.
Well, in response to Mr. Jacquin's comments, what I recall from the consultant Hazel Levine, they actually solicited business names from the mayor, the city council, and then the council committee that was overseeing the process. The controversial aspect after soliciting those names is that Hazel Levine made a point to want to allow the businesses to be able to speak freely. So the businesses that were actually interviewed were never identified, at least not to the Department of Planning and Parks, which was assisting the consultant at the time. So Hazel Levine was able to tell the businesses, no one knows who you are, but certainly we want your comments to be as frank as possible. And from that perspective, I guess they were. From my review of the list, I think you've identified the major pillars in the business community, those that support the businesses, such as our educational and recreational institutions. The only one I might offer, if you're accepting suggestions, is maybe Michael Kennedy. As you know, he is the developer of the Prime, and he did a lot of marketing studies recently trying to figure out what works here in Wildwood for a certain population. And it might be interesting for our consultants, us, I should say, to basically maybe hear what he faced, what he thinks the future holds, because I believe the project is still moving forward very slowly, but still moving forward. So thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Well, Mr. Vunich, you brought up a very good point. Perhaps we should say that we generally support the list with perhaps the addition of Mr. Kennedy and Jenny from the WBA. However, we would like it to be confidential and we don't want to know who was chosen. Would we rather go that route? Now that I'm hearing that, perhaps that would be better. Or no, we want to know.
I'm going to pop in real quick because I think that the framework of the information collection is much different than it was in 2016.
Okay.
I think we have in Julian an individual who is trusted and respected by the businesses. Prior to Julian coming on board, most businesses just said, you guys don't give a damn whether we're here or not, for the most part. And that wasn't Joe's fault or anybody's fault. It was just resource capacity in a lot of cases. And I think Julian has done an excellent job of healing those wounds making sure that they're working with the other departments within the city openly and quickly. So I really don't think that we're not going to hear what they want to tell us now that they've been talking with someone at City Hall already. When I've been at events or out just visiting businesses, I'll ask them, how are things going with you and what's going on? And the first thing I hear is, well, it's much better now that Julian's here. That's the first thing. And then the next thing I hear is Julian and I are getting together in a couple of weeks, and we're going to sit down and go over things. And if you ever pull a group together, I have a few suggestions. So I think we have a much more open business community that is willing, especially if we have members from the WBA and a lot of these known entities in town involved in this committee. It will. I don't think they're going to take it as personally as they may have when we were first trying to gather information, and we really wanted some honest feedback that I think wasn't going to be available at that time. Or if we did get it, we weren't going to like it as much. So that's just my perspective. So I'm going to make a motion that we move forward with the additional suggestions of individuals to add to this team, and that we work to get this team put together as quickly as possible.
Do we have a second to the motion? Made by Councilmember Galani. And perhaps in the next month we will have heard back from everyone, and we'll know whether or not we don't have enough people or we've got, you know, great response.
And I'm considering a couple alternate options right now as well in my head, just in case we need to fill a few seats before then.
Okay, perfect. So let's take a vote then. So all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, moving on, being mindful of the time as well. Mr. Jacquin, let's discuss our manager's report this month, please.
Sure, I will do so, Chair Edens. And just to finish off the last item briefly, if that's okay, I did put in the memo just to prepare you all for the next month's meeting. Now that we've at least identified what or how our stakeholders may be identified and invited to participate at the April meeting, in order to allow everybody to speak freely, but also properly compare apples to apples, I'd like us all to put together a list of the potential questions to ask these individuals to make sure that everybody is being asked the same questions, so we receive the same level of information from each group. Knowing conversation as a way of veering off in certain ways, I think it's still important to make sure that we hit on all the same points with these groups to get the best amount of feedback. So at the April meeting, I will be bringing forward just a list of potential questions that we can use in those meetings. So if you have any input or feedback between now and then, please feel free to send it my way.
Thank you.
Moving on into the manager's report, provided for you all the monthly recap of activities, some new business openings, some business expansions, some of the more notable ones recently. There have been a couple that have been in the works for quite some time. We now have a completed new commercial business license from the Clean Pro STL Group, which purchased the old Kern Station at 17301 Manchester in the Pond Historic District. They received their approvals from both HPC and ARB last month, and now have submitted their application for a business license as well. I know they're already getting and going pretty quick on hopefully submitting some plans quickly for their modification to the building. We do have a finalized purchase on the available office building next to Simmons Bank. There's a group, a cybersecurity company from Ellisville. They live in town in Wildwood, and they're relocating and expanding their office to take over that now empty office building abutting and attached to the Simmons Bank building. There's a couple leases out there that aren't signed yet on some pretty notable locations that, because they're not official yet, I won't get into, but there is some activity on some pretty nice places that once they're approved should be pretty good news for everybody. I did provide the regular tables, the charts showing the impacts on vacancy rate and unemployment. For this month, I intentionally added on 2021's current snapshot for the vacancy rates. Retail has gone down, the average has gone down, but the biggest difference now is that office space has gone down to 7%, just because of some new office tenants, mainly the Westridge Office Center, but the two big impacts were both that Clean Pro and the cybersecurity firm taking over better part of, I'd say, almost 9,000 square feet of office space. That made a pretty big dent in our vacancy rate. So seeing our rates drop from 11% to 7% in office vacancy when less than 5 years ago they were at 32% is a pretty big drop on office space in Wildwood. And retail is holding steady. Like I said, there's a few leases out there that are about to be signed that'll also help our case there. We hit our, I would say, our record low 2 years ago before COVID. And when COVID hit, it obviously made an impact on retail space, just with different groups like Miller House and others that were, unfortunately impacted by it. But we intend to see that retail rate drop as well here in the near future once those leases are signed. But I will be happy to take any questions or comments on any of the items in this month's report.
Councilmember Clark.
Just a quick, thanks, Madam Chair. Just a quick comment, Julian, on your report. And I so appreciate your report. And you do an excellent job. I especially appreciate the last column, your action column, and your plans to make these into formal standardized plans that go forward. And I think that will make everything go so much quicker as time goes on. Your I guess I would call these KAIs. I'm sure Steve knows what I'm talking about. Key action and indicators. So thank you very much. I just want to tell you thank you. This is a really good report.
Thank you. And I will add on to that. The last column in the monthly report with associated action from the guide, those may change within the next year as our action items with the guide change. So as we update the guide document, as we've been discussing this evening, and maybe make some changes to our action items, those items may change in the monthly report as we align them with our current strategic planning, action items and others. So this time next year, you may see some different context or content in that column.
Excellent. Thank you again for your hard work. And lastly, we got an update to our beautiful new tourism campaign PDF. I will say that we did send it to all of the committees that we talked about last time. We did get one comment that 2 of the pictures were not liked. I personally like the pictures that were selected. However, if you have any comments at this time, that would be good for feedback. And Julian as well, if you'd like to say anything.
Madam Chair, I did provide just a recap of the changes we made, which included Chair Edens' comments. As Joe had recommended at the last meeting, we added a little tagline at the very top of the flyer with the city for all seasons. We identified a caption on each of the 8 photos on the backside for some reference of where those places were for anybody that sees the photo and might want to visit it. We added a Visit Wildwood to the backside. I was playing around with the location. We can obviously make changes to this as we go on. Since it's a working document, we can work from it in the future. And one thing I did want to show you, and it was identified in the memo, but I think it's important to bring it up for everybody to see. And I mentioned this to Chair Edens, is that with the website component, hopefully everybody can see this, on our main homepage now, there is a new tourism button right in the middle of the homepage. This area of the homepage from our most recent redesign in 2018 had 6 buttons, did not include these 2 in the middle. From the recommendation of the committee and Chair Edens at past meetings in this discussion, we wanted to see if and how we could add a new button for tourism, and discussing it with City Administrator Cross and Director Funich. They both endorsed that idea, and also adding a 8th button for our event schedule as well. So there are now 2 new buttons on our homepage right in the middle for both tourism and events as recommended by this committee.
I am such a happy camper about that. I can make a button who's got the button joke. We do. I am so excited. I see Councilmember Dodwell's hand up.
There we go. Can we get a button up there for starting a business or new business startup or something so that somebody can quickly go to that page?
We do have that. It's not necessarily on the homepage, but I will show you and I'll share that quickly. Hopefully
Okay,
it's not one click on the homepage, but it's 2 clicks.
okay.
So from the homepage,
I guess I missed it.
there's the business button. So instead of
Yeah.
buttons here, if you hit business, that takes you to the economic development landing page.
Yeah,
And there's
okay.
how to open a business right here in one of the 6 tiles. And if you hit that, it takes you right to the how to open a business guide that we developed last
yeah.
year, the committee.
Okay,
And this is the current printing. We just updated it from last August, which was the last time we printed this off, but now we've updated it with some current information as well.
Thanks
So
for letting
hopefully
me
2
know.
clicks is okay.
We'll just have to live with 2.
Mr. Cross.
Thank you. Who came up with the tagline, "A City for All Seasons"?
Mr. Vunich.
Mr. Vunich, that is the coolest tagline I think I've ever seen. That is really neat. When I saw that and the way it's shown here, that's kudos to Mr. Vunich for coming up with that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
He's actually trademarked it and he's gonna, charge us anytime it's on a brochure. Yeah, sneaky. No, I'm just kidding. I still maintain though, I don't think it needs to be in that banner at the top, but we still need to pull out a separate link or a separate mini button, perhaps with a cute little American flag for the veterans. I still think it's too hard to find that veterans page, and we've done so much work on that. And I really appreciate the work the committee's done, so I want someone to be able to find it. So if there's nothing else, we don't have any items ready for action. We are almost to that hour-and-a-half mark, but I thought I would ask what everybody thought of the homework assignment and reading, if anybody got a chance to look over those documents we sent out Tuesday. Kind of what did we learn from it? Are there things that we want to include in our manager's report? And since I'm a nerd, there will probably be more homework next week. Councilmember Dodball.
I actually spent some time yesterday and read through the item number 3, this CEDS, and I just wanted to double check with Julian. Is that group that funded this? That's not the Better Together St. Louis group, is it? Okay. I didn't think it was. I just wanted to verify that. They've done a good job, I think, of trying to outlay specific things that cities independently need to go that St. Louis City wants to do, but I didn't really see or find anything on how all of our little municipalities are going to combine together and how this is going to roll down to a local level. So I didn't know if you had any background information on that, or if I should be reading one of the other 2 documents to get that information. I mean, obviously the Centene one, we know what happened there.
Right. So Councilmember Dodwell, the CEDS, the Regional St. Louis City and County Development Strategy document, that was dated, it was authored in 2016 with a 5-year structure from 2017 to 2022. That document was initiated shortly after the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership was formed. In 2013, there were still 2 separate organizations, one each for St. Louis City and one for St. Louis County. There was a St. Louis Development Corporation, which still exists for the city as their private development arm. And at the time, it was the St. Louis Economic Council for St. Louis County Economic Council for the county. In 2013, those two groups merged in some capacity to then form the City-County St. Louis Economic Development Partnership. And this was the first strategic planning document that group authored for the city and county as a whole. I know from many of the individuals that were involved in its creation that the partnership was not authorized to receive several different grant programs without having a CEDS plan on file. Having a CEDS is a pretty introductory planning document that many regional forms of government need to have on file in order to be eligible to receive certain types of grants. So this was, I wouldn't say it was them checking off a box, but it was a very important piece of their history after the partnership had formed to go through this process, which I think for them was about a year in the making, to really lay out a lot of the basic SWOT analysis type stuff for the city and county as a whole. It hit hard on the city core, the city of St. Louis, our central or suburban core. Most of the West County references was more of the high income, parks and trails. Really, the only reference to employers in West County was the I-64 corridor in Chesterfield. There was some focus on entrepreneurship, new business startup, innovation districts, those kinds of things, but it wasn't really location specific. Because that document was written in 2016 and I think its lifeline expires in 2022, I would almost say that the STL Jobs 2030 plan kind of is an addendum to it, because the Jobs 2030 plan was authored by the new Greater St. Louis Inc., which is that new consolidated group of 5 regional economic development agencies: the Regional Chamber, Alliance STL, Downtown St. Louis, Arch to Park, and Greater St. Louis Inc. authored the Jobs 2030 plan as the next look, the next 10 years, focusing on a lot of the same issues, but it was the first one that looked at the region as a whole instead of 30 different fragmented studies for different smaller geographies of St. Louis.
Okay. Thank you. I'll go back and make sure that I read through that document too before the next couple of days.
Extended homework, yes. I have 2 thoughts, and I'll if nobody else has any comments, it'll be something to Councilmember Galani does, something to noodle on as well. One thing I noticed is that the St. Louis City study put a lot of emphasis on local businesses, especially minority-owned businesses, and the county study talked less about small businesses, which I thought was odd, because that is still a major employer in the county. The other thing I noticed is those shocks and stresses are really the same throughout the county, right? We're still worried about flooding here. We're still worried about tornadoes. We still have the broadband issues as a stress, and the aging population as a stress, and the other general workforce issues. One thought I had for noodling in the future is that, we are well established as a commuter city, and sometimes that works for us. I think the question is, how does that work for us, in the long run? Our small businesses were hit hard in COVID. We perhaps were a little bit more resilient because we are not centered around particularly one large employer that experienced massive layoffs, as many communities are, especially more rural areas. The question is if St. Louis City kind of gets their act together through this, Greater St. Louis organization. I mean, these are some pretty lofty goals, but some of them sound potentially achievable in the next 10 years. So if St. Louis City improves and becomes a more desirable place to reside, are we going to experience perhaps a population loss and an even greater aging population, because maybe younger families or that millennial age group that's ready to buy a house is looking to move more for a city experience? So then perhaps we no longer want to stay a commuter town 15 years from now. So that's my thought. Councilmember Galani.
Thank you. I just had a couple things to say. For starters, I think right now, St. Louis City and St. Louis County are probably the worst models to look at as far as how to structure economic development or even managing anything. Julie and I would advocate that we send you over there to give them a seminar on do their jobs, you know. And you know, we kind of can chuckle at it, but at the same time, the Centene example you brought up, Councilmember Dodwell, is just one stake out of many. Major corporations are fleeing this entire metropolitan area faster than you can blink. And the current folks that are in charge in the county and the city, I think the city, you know, and being in the mortgage business myself, you know, we see a mass exodus of folks wanting to move out of St. Louis City due to the crime. I mean, people don't want to raise families in the city, and there was a lot of development that took place in from 2000 to 2008 and 9 before the market had crashed, with loft development and a lot of rehabbing that was being done down in the city with a lot of those old homes. And you know, a lot of it's going in vain, you know, because you know, we recently did a loan for a St. Louis City detective that was moving his family to Baldwin because he didn't feel it was safe for them to live in the city where he works. So just those kinds of examples, though, and it's not an isolated situation; it's widespread. So you know, St. Louis County is now starting to actually follow suit with the damage that the city's already done. I think that my point with this is that I think it's more important now than ever for municipalities like us to take charge and manage it in-house the way we are. I mean, there's certain things that we can't do, but with having somebody like Julian and a robust economic development focus and perspective from our city level to let our businesses know that, you know, we care, that they're here, and we want to help foster their growth, and we want to attract more businesses to our city. I think that's a very attractive component for growth. And I think a city like Wildwood is a great attractive location for folks to settle down and you know, raise a family with education and access to dining and retail and all these things. So as long as we stay on track with that and continue to push that from our side, I think we're in a good position, because like I said, the mothership's crashing and burning. So it's going to be up to the satellite operations like the individual municipalities to do the best they can to keep things going. So that's just my opinion. It's sad, but unfortunately it's true.
All part of the process of understanding that we don't exist in a vacuum and regional cooperation happens. And with that, we're at 7:30. So if there's no additional comments, maybe we'll do some more reading and continue to educate ourselves and start with the next council meeting. Yep, Mr. Jacqueline.
Just two quick items in other business for everybody's knowledge. One of which was already forwarded to you by our city clerk. I had intended to bring it up tonight anyway. You might, if you've been on council for longer than a year, you should know that the University of Missouri St. Louis hosts chancellor certificate programs, both for planning and zoning, but also more recently for economic development. In the past, the city has offered enrollment in the program for the planning and zoning certificate program to the members of both the city council and the planning and zoning commission. I know in the past several individuals of both groups have participated and completed that program. There is a new brochure available for the 2021 course for the economic development program with UMSL. There is a brochure. You should all have it in your email, but I can re-forward it to you as well. As in past years, the city is willing to pay for your registration to either one of the courses or the full series of module. There's 7 courses. They cover very introductory concepts. They're intended for elected officials, entry-level staff. I've been working with most, if not all, of the instructors for the better part of the last decade and know most of them very well. So I trust all of them and that they know what they're doing. But if any of you are interested in going to either one of the courses or the entire series of 7 modules, please let us know and we'll make sure to sign you up for that course. I'd be happy to resend it to everybody.
Please resend it and I'll sign up for either the whole thing or part of it.
And then the other item from last night, I think we were all as a committee given some homework from the full council as part of the strategic planning discussion. I believe each of the 3 standing committees was asked to look at our specific goals and sub-goals. Since one of the 6 primary goals is economic development, and we have a set of sub-goals relative to that item. I wanted to at least get it on all of your radars, thinking that maybe at the April meeting, we could just take a look at the goals that we have identified from council for economic development for the next 5 years, just to at least discuss it as a committee and have some general discussion about it. But I think that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Had to hold my horses there a little bit. Okay, do we have anything else? All right, going once, going twice. I will take a motion to close. Made by Councilmember Galani, seconded by Councilmember Clark. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain. As always, it's been a great night, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. And